Well, good morning, everybody. And, Missourians deserve better than the budget that was just passed. This budget fails to fully fund our public schools, our neighborhood schools, fails to adequately fund child care services, fails to fund public safety efforts, and much more. Missouri's budget problems are entirely self-inflicted by the Republicans. A decade of special tax breaks for the wealthy and well-connected have left the state facing a budget crisis. Missouri's budget is on life support. This year, we barely survive. Next year, the plug gets pulled. We brought the ranking member on appropriations, Senator May, here to address any budget questions. I can address any other questions, but since that was the focus this week, Senator May. So if you want to ask questions.
In years past, it seems like the Senate maybe made bigger changes between the House version and what the Senate passed out. I mean, there were some changes, but it feels like a little more similar under Appropriations Chair Black versus Huff. What do you make of that change, and how do you feel like it stands for future budgets?
Well, I'm hoping that, the Senate has always been the champions when it came to budget or appropriations. And we have always made bigger changes. We've always restored things that should be restored and cut. So I'm not satisfied with the way, budget went this year, but, you have to give some grace because this is, our chair's first time taking over as chair of the budget. And plus, I think he's in the middle of a, term here for the budget. So, for the appropriations. But yes, I'm not satisfied with the way we did things this year. But I think the lean years are because of all the cuts we have done and those unnecessary cuts. Say, for instance, the income tax cut, that will be 63% of our GR. So how do we pay our bills after that?
Do you think that has to go through voter approval? How do you feel like that's going to fare at the ballot box if the message is, how much it makes up the state budget?
Right. Well, the correct answer to the voters would be, what are you losing? For this income tax, what are you losing? What's not going to be taken care of? It's easy to say, eliminate this tax, but what is this tax covering? And I think that's the message that does not get told. And I'm hoping that we can do the proper messaging so people can take an educated vote. I understand, yes, I want to keep more of my income, but what am I losing and what will we not have as a result of this from the state government? Who's going to be the bigger loser?
And to be clear, in that ballot language, there is no tax cut. To be clear, there is no tax cut. There's only gives the legislature the ability to raise taxes on everything else.
Will Democrats be actively involved in campaigning against the income tax elimination, phase out?
I think there's going to be a really big bipartisan effort of people that are actively campaigning against that. This in my mind, is really a bad idea, to tax everything, to tax our seniors, to tax our disabled veterans, even more than they already are taxed. People are struggling to make ends meet. So I think there's going to be a real bipartisan effort, and there already is a bipartisan effort to strike, vote against this and to campaign against this, for sure.
Absolutely, because when you start raising taxes on other things that people care about, that they weren't paying the higher tax on before, you're just trading one thing for another. And what's that trade-off?
I have a budget question for you. You were here during some leaner years under Governor Nixon. How does this feel, knowing that things are potentially going to be uglier this next year? Do you have any kind of comparison between those times?
Well, I think that when we were in those years, we still were paying our bills. We didn't have these tremendous cuts that we have now. We didn't have these phase-in cuts that's coming, that's getting ready to come to full fruition. So we were still able to pay our bills back then, and we still got necessary things paid for, and our constituents still were able to receive the impact. Money came home you know, in reference to services, non-for-profits who were providing services on the ground to people. Those agencies and things were still able to do that in the leaner years, but we didn't have these additional cuts in the leaner years either.
How important will it be in conference committee to make sure the funding for public schools doesn't rely too much on the lottery proceeds, that we don't overinflate how much we're going to receive from lottery?
Well, I know those numbers. We're going to have to figure out how to, that should be our number one thing, funding public education. So basically, if we fully fund education, then everything else has to trickle behind fully funding education. So I think we'll still fight for it in conference because we need to, and we need to get it fully funded. Now, I'm not sure how, what was the other part of your question you said?
It's that lottery fund.
Well, the lottery was down a little, so we're gonna have to figure out other ways within the budget to fund education. And we have a lot of funds that are not receiving biannual sweeps that we can also use to help fund education. So if you look at those funds, you'll see the balances in those funds. A lot of bank accounts.
Obviously the Senate made some changes but not a lot, like for example, the formula is the same too, so that won't be conferenceable. But what are some things that you're hoping to win in the conference committee?
Well, I think, you know, one of the biggest things that I'm hoping to is to restore the cut to respite. I think that we have been on a good trend reducing opioid overdoses since, you know, 2022. We've been on an excellent trend. Now we're getting ready to cut. I don't want to return back to where we have these high instances of overdoses and the agencies on the ground don't have the resources they need to combat it. So that's a big thing for me, putting that $140,000 back, and I think it's a small amount for where we have come, how far we have come in overdoses.
Senator Beck, we're getting towards the end. What do you think Republicans still want to do? Obviously, you got to get the budget done the income tax. What else do you think they're going to try and push?
I'm sure there's going to be, we're going to have a discussion on property taxes. I know that was one of their number one things that they discussed in their caucus. I'm not sure they knew exactly what they wanted, but I know that conversation's coming probably sooner rather than later. Other than that, I don't know exactly what is all out there. There's a lot of bills. I think we got like 1,000 House bills over here. I guess they're trying to break a record or something. I don't know. But there's a lot of bad ideas that are over here right now, and we'll probably have to sort through those one at a time. And as we go down the path, time on the floor gets really, really valuable. So I guess I'll have to pick and choose what they think is important. So.
Do you think there'll be any progress or compromise on the A through F grading for schools that Kehoe wants?
That'll be probably another conversation that happens here shortly too. Maybe next week. I don't know exactly when, but that is coming down. I know that is one of their priorities. The thing about that is they say that's going to happen no matter what, whether he does it by executive order or do we control what that looks like here in the legislature. So those are decisions, and we're in conversations about those things now. What that final product looks like, I have no idea, but the people will know, you know, when we vote it out.
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you think there might be any progress on the child sexual abuse statute of limitations legislation? I already talked to Senator May about it, but
I would hope so. I think we could do, if we left all the other stuff out, all the games in that bill, I'm just being honest with you, if we just made it strictly about that, I think that would be probably a unanimous vote of, you know, bipartisan support in that chamber. However, they've added some other things to muddy the waters. If we could just make it about that, that would be great.
Yes, and they shouldn't trade, you know, when they're doing tort reform, you shouldn't trade the thing that the children for trying to make sure that people don't have remedies. So they do this thing where they try to put something bad with something good, and then making you vote against what's good. But that bill should die if they want to put that tort reform where they're trying to go from 5 years to 3 years, on that bill, because when people have personal injury, we don't need a timeline to go to 3 years that's going to benefit insurance companies and corporations. So we need people to know why we're standing against that bill right now.
If they brought up a clean bill tomorrow, or, you know, Monday, we would pass it right then and there.
Absolutely.
And a clean bill would be all of the tort reform stripped out, or is there? any-
Strictly the child, strictly leaving the child, yeah, all that stuff in there. Yep.
So something the House passed earlier this year, which they've done every year for years, is now the removal of the sunsets for the trans healthcare and sport participation. Do you see that going on in the Senate, or do you think that's an issue that's going to be campaigned on with Amendment 3?
So what I will tell you is we don't call what comes to the floor and what they decide is their priority. So as of yet, it was up on the floor for a little bit. They took it down to some extent, not the exact same thing you're talking about. So we don't know what that is, and that would be if you see it on the floor, that means the Senate leadership, Republican leadership, decided that needed to be on the floor.
Do you think it will be a priority when they might have to campaign with it for 3?
You probably have to go ask them.
Okay.
Are they here?
Yesterday, Senator Beck, you proposed more transparency requirements in the personal financial disclosure. Obviously, that didn't make it onto the budget bill. Do you see a way forward adding it onto something else this year?
So I think I've had a lot of conversations with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and I've yet to have a conversation with one of my Republican colleagues that they say they think the treasurer is doing a bang-up job with the Most College program. I have not one of them has said that. Matter of fact, they said the opposite. I'll leave names out of it and whatever in general. To me, and just like I said yesterday on the floor, there has to be transparency there. That's $50 million that these folks, in which I voted against that bill, they decided that's important. It goes into this Most Scholars program to subsidize the wealthy and do all these other things. If you're going to do that, we need to know where that money's going and who's receiving that money. That's simple. My amendment said, okay, let's just hold us accountable. I'm not even saying we want all the information. Let's just hold us accountable, which I thought had a shot, but you know, sometimes you live in, you know, fairyland sometimes. But at the end of the day, I didn't see anything wrong with that. I would love to hold myself at a higher accountability of, I already fill it out now. You know, I fill it out for tax credits and other things. Why shouldn't this be just as important? So I think there could be a path of some sort of movement, whether it happens by the end of this year, maybe. I'm hopeful some things could happen, but that's remains to be seen.
Are you aware of any specific members of either the House or Senate who have children that are receiving those funds?
Okay, so here's the literally the problem with this. We could not access the information. Even as a government entity, we are not allowed, didn't want kids' names, didn't want anything else. We are not allowed to access that information. They actually told us they couldn't give us that information because that is exactly what our first was a request and then a sunshine request to find out if there's any elected officials that are receiving it, okay? Other people have told me whatever, it doesn't matter. I haven't seen it, it's never been before me. I have no idea. And that's the point of my argument here is we should have an idea. We should have idea, you're getting it here, are people bucking the system? Are they excluding some of the public if this is so important that elected officials are getting it before others? You know, I'm not even saying that's happening, but we don't know. We also don't know who's receiving it. And there's also, there's problems with, they haven't put the test scores on there yet. They haven't put the high school thing, graduation rates. They haven't done any of the stuff that they're supposed to do. And that, they meaning the treasurer's office. And that's what my frustration is we need transparency across the board. Whether, is the program working? You know, where's the money going? Do we even know that they're receiving it? We don't know that. You know, maybe others do because I know they had a data breach and some other things like that. And that's just another example of, and I'll use this term, I try not to use this a lot, but it's incompetence. And even when I use that term with my Republican colleagues, nobody has fought me back on that language. So, yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you.